Welcome back to the Proximity is Power podcast. Today's episode 11. And I have my friend with me here, Sean. He is the owner, founder of Plunge. For you guys in Utah, you guys have heard of Plunge or been. It's a cold plunge sauna place. It's one of the coolest experiences if you haven't done it. For those of you that have gone, know how cool it is and all the health benefits. So, Sean, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, I'm just happy to be here.
This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, this is gonna be super fun.
Dude, I remember my first plunge experience was probably three years ago, and yeah, I'm like, so how I got introduced to cold plunging and saunas was I went to a Tony Robbins event, and Wim Hof spoke about all the benefits of cold plunging. And then some other lady got up there and talked about saunas and all the health benefits that go along with that. And I'm like, I got back to Utah after that, after that seminar. And I was like, holy crap, like I need to start cold plunging. I need to start, using saunas as like a daily practice. And there wasn't, at first I started sitting in the river, Provo River, and just going to like the Vasa sauna.
Yeah.
But then I Googled and I found Plunge. I think I had one person tell me about it, and I Googled it and signed up because you guys had both in the same place,
Yeah. Well, you were one, I do remember you were like probably one of our first 10 or 15 members.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I remember talking to you and I remember you mentioning about, talking about Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And about like what they were talking about. And in my brain, I just thought it was so funny because like when I would bring this up to, people when I was first thinking about this back in like, early 2018, most people just thought like, what in the crap are you doing?
Yeah.
So like when you told me that Tony Robbins was talking about it, I'm like, this is great, man.
Yeah.
Like that, like somebody else is
beginning of the science
helping,
getting viral. Yeah. You
exactly.
totally were. You were perfectly timed for the cold plunge sauna age.
It was pretty lucky in all honesty. And not only that too, but it was also interesting because when I remember that when you got your membership, like you're like, dude, I'm gonna come every day. And sure enough, man, you were in every single day. You were consistent. I loved that. I was super impressed.
I tried to be. I remember calling Plunge when I first heard about it. I'm like, I talked to you on the phone. I was like, so how much is it? What does it look like? And at the time you guys were just selling monthly memberships where you could only go 4 max a month. And I'm like, I need to go 4 to 7 times a week because that's what Tony and all these guys talked about. And you're like, well, we don't have like an unlimited plan. I'm like, call me back when you guys have an unlimited plan. And then literally a month later or whatever, you called me, you're like, hey, like we're doing a limited membership. Yeah.
When I started Plunge, I had no idea that people would want to like come
that often.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Like I started, doing contrast therapy and I would do it pretty regularly, but even I wasn't doing it every single day.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
Is that like something that's a membership that we should offer?
Yeah.
And so, but like right after you mentioned it, like there were a handful of other people that were like, hey, like, can we get on this every single day? And I'm like, okay, well, we better look at this.
Yeah.
So we started that unlimited plan. And again, we thought that like there would be like 10 people interested in the unlimited plan.
Yeah.
As soon as we opened it up, like we had to cap it. We had to cap it at like 50 people.
It got sold out so fast.
Yeah, because we're like, oh crap, we kind of underestimated the amount that people wanted to do this, which was a really good sign.
Yeah.
But
you're like thinking, do you guys have anything better to do than come freaking sit in the cold in the sun every day?
It was honestly like when the surprise mainly came from not the fact that like people wanted to do it, but like just that we were surprised that so many people were interested in doing it every day. And so anyways, it was kind of interesting. I always tease with people that we've paid a lot of dumb tax starting Plunge.
Yeah.
Because, so many of those decisions, like starting the unlimited pass, we're like, okay, well, we need to do an unlimited pass. Let's start it. And then we're like, crap, we should have done that a little bit differently. And then, you kind of think about it in the future, kind of going back.
Right. Yeah. That's how every business, man, you don't know what the freak you're doing. You make mistakes every day, And,
oh, it's so true.
So going back, Sean, because Plunge was created what year?
So our first month open, Plunge, was June of 2021. I think I created the LLC back in like November of 2020. Okay. The whole idea was for me to start it. I actually I gave my job like a 2-month notice because I was finishing up some projects, and I was like, hey, I'm going to finish these up, and then I'm going to, start doing this thing called Plunge. And I kind of explained it to him and thought I was kind of out there. But the whole idea was for me to quit in like, it was supposed to be April of 2020. But of course, right after I gave my 2 months notice, the pandemic hit, and we're like, oh, okay, wow. we better press pause. We better, it's probably not the best time to start a public bathhouse.
Yeah.
So we ended up actually opening our doors in June of 2021.
Wow. June of 2021. So let's back up a little bit even. Like, so where did you grow up?
I grew up I call it Southern Utah, but it's more Central Utah, Beaver.
Okay.
I mean, everybody that lives here in Utah, they've been to Beaver.
Yeah.
It's just right on your way down to St. George and Vegas. It's kind of like a main fuel stop. So
yeah,
super small town.
So you grew up, born and raised there.
Yeah.
And what did you like doing growing up? Were you in sports?
Yeah. So, I mean, my whole family, we were really big into sports. And growing up in a place like Beaver, you were kind of expected, if you're coordinated and like sports, you do them all, right? Yeah. So growing up, it was football, basketball, baseball, and track, all the way up until like my junior year, where I decided like, I don't want to play baseball anymore, right? And that's just kind of how it is growing up in a small town. And it was funny because my senior year was like the first time they offered a soccer program, at my school. So
super small.
Yeah, it was a super small school. And it was a lot of sports. The mountains in Beaver are amazing too. So we spent a lot of time up there backpacking and hiking. And that's, I'd still do a ton of trail running and mountain biking. That's kind of where I fell in love with it, was up in the mountains, just right up above Beaver. It's kind of a little hidden gem down there. Yeah, it's really nice.
So growing up, did you have like a entrepreneurial mind or spirit growing up?
More of an ADHD, okay. Mind.
Yeah.
My wife would always tease me that when we first got married, there wouldn't be, a month that would go by where I'd be like, hey, I've got this idea. And most of them were just trash.
Yeah,
right?
You told me that. Yeah, you were always thinking of something.
Yeah, always trying to think of something. And even in high school, there was, I would spend hours just doodling like different brand logos and, just stuff.
Yeah.
And I was always doodling. So definitely it's always been on my mind. And I was at an ad agency a while, right out of college. And my boss there, we were talking one time as we were traveling, and I was telling him, I'm like, dude, I legit think I have ADHD. And he's like, no, like you do. I can tell. He's like, I've got it. I know you've got it.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I'm like, oh man, we start talking about business. He's just telling me, he's like, but honestly, it's like it's kind of like a business superpower, because you fixate on these things and you
obsess over them.
You obsess over them. And even though it's kind of hard to stay focused, a lot of times it provides some good results, and where you're able to kind of fixate and focus and kind of build from there, which is kind of interesting. But anyways.
So growing up, did your parents make you have jobs growing up?
Yeah, I had ever since I was 7 years old. I remember I proved to my mom that I could ride a bike and then I had a paper route, because my mom was in charge of the distribution paper route for the Deseret News and Tribune down in Beaver, where she would take them all to the newsstands and the paper carriers, and we would go deliver them.
Oh, cool.
And so from that point, I had my own little paper route that I would do. And then even up until the time I graduated, I was either doing my own little paper route or I was doing a distribution route. So I delivered newspapers, from a super young age. And then I'd always pick up random summer jobs with farmers. And then I worked at a random hotel down in Beaver. I worked at Subway. I worked as a lifeguard. A
mix of everything.
Oh yeah. I'm telling you, dude, ADHD. It was literally every summer I was like, well, let me do something different. I'm going to be a lifeguard this year. Yeah. Or, just whatever random was going on down there. So yeah.
Heck yeah. When growing up, did you know what you wanted to do for a living? What was your dream job growing up?
Not really.
Okay.
That was always kind of a sort I even getting into college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. one of my good friends and mentors, his name's Alex Bean. He's one of the guys who started and founded Divi. Mm-hmm. And he told me, I was talking to him, this was way before his Divi days, but we were talking and I'm like, dude, I have no idea what do I want to major in. Yeah. And he's like, dude, don't worry about that. He's like, you'll figure that out after school, go to school, make sure you get that done. Mm-hmm. But he's like, he was telling me he specifically got his degree in geography so that he had the least amount of credits that he needed to get out of there.
Just the easiest.
And then
degree.
he started working, just different jobs and, worked his way up and was a sales manager and then was working, on different teams, doing different stuff until he worked his way into what he was doing at Divi. And
wow.
I kind of realized that with school. And so I ended up graduating in advertising, which I absolutely loved. Yeah. And it was, I love that program at BYU. Yeah. And I worked in, advertising for quite a while, but anytime anybody asks what I did in advertising, I was just a professional emailer, and that's basically what I am now, but yeah.
That's cool. So you graduate high school and then did you immediately go to college?
Yeah, well, so I graduated high school. I actually went up and lived up in Seattle for a few years, and I worked, again, random job, but I worked for a guy who did remodels. It was my brother-in-law. Okay. And I lived up there for a while.
Remodeling houses, like flipping them pretty much?
Yeah, basically he would go in and, he would do like, if they wanted a, new kitchen or new bathrooms, he would do kind of like smaller projects within houses that were home remodeling.
Really cool.
So I did that, and then I went on my mission, and I served in Honduras.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
And yeah, it was right during like some really high political tension. We were on lockdown for a long periods of time on my mission because there was like a lot of civil unrest. But I mean, as a missionary, you don't even realize that stuff's really happening. You're you're so naive.
Yeah, and you just think you're safe with God, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And then after I got home from my mission, that's when I got into BYU, and that's when I started going there.
So BYU Provo, and you graduate in the advertising department. Mm-hmm. Really cool. I think my aunt served in Honduras and got like a tapeworm, came back like with 50 pounds underweight, like, or whatever, and like it was gnarly.
Same thing happened to me, man. I feel like most people, if you get out of there without a parasite, you're like, the joke was that if you get out of there without a parasite and not getting robbed, like that was you must be extra holy or something. I never got mugged, but I definitely got my fair share of parasites.
Yeah. So. I remember I've been to Ecuador a couple of times, humanitarian trips, and by the last couple days there, you're just throwing up. You got diarrhea. They call it double dragon.
Double dragon.
Just like, man, you feel like you're on your deathbed sweating.
For sure.
It's gnarly.
For some reason, as missionaries, we always thought it was like the cure to like chug a half a bottle of Pepto-Bismol and a Coke and just lay there. And for some reason, we thought that would work, but it never did.
My dad always said Coke helped kill parasites, but I don't think there's any science on that.
Exactly. That's probably what we thought too.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So you get back, start going to school, and so you graduate, and then you start working in advertising.
Yeah.
Right. And how are you feeling at that point?
Well, it's interesting because and this is honestly, people ask, that, the question of like, do you have any regrets of what you did in school or like the way your career's gone? And really the only thing I can turn back to is that when I went into advertising, you have two choices in advertising. You can go into the management track or you can go into the creative track. And I thought like, I don't have a ton of creative background, and I wasn't super interested in like buckling down for the extra year it would have taken me to like develop some of those skills and go into like the creative portion of that. And so I went into the management side of it, and that's kind of what I graduated, and that's what I got my jobs in afterwards. I was in kind of advertising management, I guess, for like 6 or 7 years with the agency that I was with here in Provo. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I kind of left working with that advertising agency, and I got into tech product management, project management. And so that's when I was at a company doing that for 2 years. And then that's when I went to Weave, and I was kind of doing some of that similar stuff there. Mm-hmm. But, I always kind of thought like, it would have been interesting if I would have actually taken the time to develop some of those skills that I still wish I had from a creative standpoint, because it's still stuff that I dabble in, and it's still stuff that is like, it's very interesting to me. But that's kind of my arc of what happened after school into my careers.
That's cool. And then, so while you're working in advertising, are you like pretty dissatisfied, or are you just always thinking about different business ideas? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the form of advertising that we were working in, it was influencer advertising. And so we were dealing with, really big name YouTubers and Instagram influencers, and TikTok wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
But we were dealing with a lot of people that had a lot of influence and things like that. And it ended up really where I started to become dissatisfied with what I was doing within advertising is I found it being incredibly mind warping to be like always in that space of people. I don't know, just the influencer space in general. Like I remember, like my job was basically to like watch YouTube and make sure that they were advertising our products correctly and communicate with these different influencers. And 90% of the people that we would deal with were amazing people. And I still think that, most of the people and influencers that I dealt with on a regular basis were amazing. Some of them, felt like that because of the influence they wielded were, they had more pull or were more important than you'd think they were.
Yeah.
But also the other portion of that too is that it made you start thinking that like your life that you're actually living wasn't what it should be, right? It kind of warped your perspective on the life I had, and the life I had was amazing. Like, like there's no reason I should be dissatisfied with the life I was living. Like both my wife and I had good careers, and, things were going really well. And, there was really nothing to be mad about, but I'd get home and be like, oh man, I need like a private helicopter to go to like Hawaii and skydive or
like
whatever, right?
Comparing your life to all these influencers.
Exactly. Where it's, it kind of becomes mind warping. And so that's why I decided to kind of get out of that.
So those influencers being in their proximity, right? Kind of like changed your mindset about work and like what you wanted to do long term, and that kind of sparked your interest in entrepreneurship pretty much.
Yeah. I think that's where I kind of realized, number one, seeing how they built their businesses for themselves. And you realize like, oh, okay, like there could be something different out there. And even before then, like I had wanted to start businesses, but I think, being in close proximity to a lot of, those different social media influencers who had built really impressive businesses just based off of, kind of their influence and their following. Kind of made me realize that I kind of wanted to do something different as well.
Cool.
And, that was kind of the initial, kind of the impetus of us wanting to, really actually go after starting something of our own. It still was, 2.5, 3 years before we actually found something that we wanted to do. But.
But that kind of got you on the track of like thinking of different business ideas, like the ideation phase. And what gave you the idea for Plunge? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So back in like end of 2017 into 2018, I love to dabble in, endurance sports. So mountain biking and trail running and, kind of everything in between. And I was in the midst of training for a trail marathon and a really long bike ride that I was going to do with my brothers. We call it our Suffer Fest that we do like every other year. And I was in the midst of kind of training for those two things. And I was kind of pushing it pretty hard to be able to be ready for both of those, two endeavors. And it was interesting because I was just looking for a way to like recover my body so that I could, bike one day and then go run the next day and kind of continue to do that. And I kind of looked back on, my time playing football in Beaver, and they would always have us take ice baths when we were sore. And I was like, I wonder if that would work. And so I started to go sit in the Provo River and just soak my legs. And it was helping, quite a bit from just a recovery standpoint.
Cool.
And I was like, that's really cool. But it wasn't until a few months after that where I'd, been doing this 2 to 3 times a week where I noticed that it was really helping with my anxiety and really helping with my overall stress levels.
Really?
Yeah, because from the time I was in high school, I've always dealt with what I would call like low level, like anxiety attacks and panic attacks and stuff. And it wasn't, until I had started, utilizing the cold quite often that, like my wife mentioned, she's like, hey, you haven't had like any of your anxiety attacks or anything for a long time, right? And I was like, huh, that's weird. And I was trying to think of what's changed, and the only thing that had changed is that I was in cold water. And so anyways, fast forward about a month from there, I was listening to a book called The Finnish Way. And in The Finnish Way, they talk about sauna and cold plunge, and sauna and winter swimming. And they kind of correlate that to one of the reasons why the Finns are so happy and why they always rank so highly on the happiness index.
Interesting.
And so I was like, I've never tried, I've saunaed before, but I've never actually tried the two together. And so we found different ways to do it. And from the very first time, it was like, pretty mind blowing, like the feeling that you feel directly out of the sauna, getting into the cold. And like, I linked up with my wife after that, and she was actually the one to say this time around, like, hey, this is like a business we should start. I'm like, wait, you're pitching me a business idea?
Yeah.
Like, let's do this. Let's go.
All your dumb ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, she would be the one that, like, the first one she says, like, we actually do. But that was kind of what drove the whole thing. And so you were working at Weave at the time, right? Yeah, because I was working at a company called Rain Focus.
Okay.
And it was right about then that we decided, like, hey, let's do this. And so that's when I quit, because I was like, we're going to actually like commit to this and we're going to do it. And then the pandemic hit. I had a good friend that was working at Weave, and during the pandemic, he's like, hey, we need some people to help with a few tasks, and they brought me on as a consultant, and then I just stayed there for 2 years, and they were really flexible. And I actually worked at Weave while I was starting Plunge, and they were really good to work with in that fashion. So what were kind of like the first steps that you did to take to start Plunge? So you found a location. Well, it's funny because the first thing that we started to do is we started to like kind of model out what the potential revenue could be, right? And so we started messing around with a whole bunch of different like models to see like how much would we need to charge, and how many people would need to come in.
Because there wasn't like anything like that on the market.
No, not really. And so, and that was the other hard part, is that, when I would meet with my other friends that were my mentors, the first thing they'd say is like, well, have you done some market research? I'm like, well, it's really hard to do market research. Like I've only found, 2 places that kind of modeled like kind of what we wanted to do. And even like those businesses were operating in a little bit different way than we wanted to operate. And so I didn't know, how to really do that market research. And really what we ended up doing is we just ended up inviting people over to sit in our cattle trough and like go sit in the river and like get people's feedback on if they enjoyed it, would they do it again. And it was awesome. It was so like kind of like guerrilla tactic, just trying to get people's feedback on it. And the one thing that kept like coming back to us is that like every single person that we had to come and do it, even the ones that were like deathly afraid of, sitting in ice water, like they would be like, no, I do that 100%. Like I feel so good. I slept so good that night. And like, that's the feedback that we kept getting. And so other than that, like, it's funny to look back on this because we made such a like big risk by doing this with really not knowing, other than like having people come into our backyard, like hanging out in our cattle trough, whether or not it was, a viable business.
Wow.
So from there, after like doing the minimal amount of market research that we could,
some validation.
We that's when we kind of started to look for a location, and that's really when the pandemic hit full swing. And so the first version of Plunge that we really wanted to do was kind of a more blown out version where we wanted to have like a space for yoga and breathing and maybe even massage. And as we started getting further into the pandemic, we just got this feeling that we really needed to pare down what we did and really try and do contrast therapy the best that we can in order to, to try and do that the very best that we can. Because I don't know a lot about massage, so I didn't know if we could do massage very well.
So the initial idea pretty much was like an all-around spa place where you could get massages, you could do yoga, cold plunge, sauna, maybe even work out there. And then you kind of just realized during COVID, hey, like this is a big risk, especially with like a pandemic that could come out of nowhere. Like maybe we should go a little bit more niche, right?
Yeah, I think we were listening to the Lean Startup. I don't know if you've ever read that book or
I think I've heard of it. I don't know.
Yeah, but anyways, like one of the big things about that is, you know, come up with what your MVP is, right? What is your minimum viable product? And we realized that our minimum viable product is sauna and cold plunge. And we also realized that if we could do that well, it would make our business a lot more scalable and a lot easier to run in the long term because we don't have so many moving parts to it. So that's kind of why we decided to try and, you know, really pare it down into what you see at Plunge Provo. And there's definitely things we've learned from Plunge Provo that we're like, we'd never do it that way again. Right. But at the same time, I think we were really lucky that we did try and do, you know, things as simply as possible so that, you know, I think it gave us less things that could go wrong so that we could focus on the things that were going right, I guess, you know,
totally.
I don't know.
So, and then so COVID happens, and then when do you open Plunge Provo, first location?
Yeah. So that was in June of 2021 is when we first got
2021.
Yeah.
So a full year pretty much in change from when COVID strikes pretty much.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. We locked down our space in like November of 2020. And we thought the build out was going to be super simple, really fast. And, you know, it never is.
Right.
You know, and so that took a little bit longer than we had thought. And then we finally, you know, opened our doors in June of 2021.
Heck yeah. How are you thinking? What were you thinking day one it opens?
I tell people it was such an interesting journey because this thing that had been so important as like a tool in my toolbox for my anxiety and my stress, it like completely turned on me from the very first day that we opened. Cause then if I thought about cold plunging, it would put me right into like an anxiety attack.
State. Yeah.
Yeah. Like literally for a while,
wow.
Like for the first few weeks, like I literally could not run the business cause I just couldn't. And so like my wife, she's an angel. She stepped in and started running quite a bit of it. And we had some other people that we had hired that like really took a big role until like I felt like I could do it. And it was the weirdest experience of my life. And I tell people that are looking to get into entrepreneurship that those, you know, depending on, you know, we literally put up our house to, you know, to get the funds to make it happen. And so that was part of the stress level thinking like, well, if this doesn't work, like I just ruined my family's life, right?
On it, yeah.
But depending on, you know, what level of investment you have into it, whether emotionally or financially, those first months can be, and most likely will be, the hardest months of your entire life. Like it's rough, it's difficult, and it's really dark.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you learn things about yourself coming through something like that are really important. Right. So anyways, and that might just be personal to me. I know I've talked to a few other entrepreneurs who say the same thing. Yeah. But it's scary. Yeah. It's scary. It's a whole experience in and of itself. So
what were some of those early struggles?
Well, so just there's always, I forget, the imposter syndrome is a big thing, right? Like you're like, okay, I've set this thing up. Yeah. I'm really hoping it's going to work. Is it actually going to work? And do I actually know enough of what I'm doing to actually make this work? Right. And then not only that, but as like the space started to get used, you know, it's like the first little bit, you're like, okay, well, we had one person in today, you know, and then week 2, we had 5 people in, you know, like, you know, it's just like you in those weeks will feel immensely long, right? When you're not sure if things will actually, you know, start working. And so, you know, though that in and of itself is pretty hard. We learned a lot of lessons with the equipment that we put in, with the kind of cold plunges that we put in, with the drainage, with
the filters,
filters, like so many things. And you have to be okay with a process of learning what you did wrong to make it right, because it's not going to be a really quick fix. And that's part of it too, is that I just wanted to fix it all so fast. And I knew that it wasn't going to be that way. And it was hard to think of like, okay, how do we do this? How are we going to go about this? And it was just kind of daunting, if that makes sense.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you were betting your entire life savings pretty much on starting this, and you're like, wow, we've been open a week and one person's come through
exactly.
pretty much. And it's like, how are we going to make this thing work pretty much?
Well, wow. And I mean too, it's, a lot of people like yourself that were coming in.
Yeah.
Like there's like this little, there were people that were talking about it.
Yeah.
But like, even when I talked about it to some of my family members, a lot of them are like, you're starting a business. Oh, is it like, marketing? Or are you doing something with like
advertising?
Like, what are you doing? Or something in tech? And I'd be like, no, I'm going to have people like go from a sauna to a cold plunge.
And it's such new science. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a lot of people were like, okay, and so there's that whole thing playing in the back of your mind. Like we're people, right? You. So it was kind of a whole roller coaster and weird set of emotions, and trying to figure out, is what we're doing like actually something that people want to do, or am I like weird and like this? You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's funny. I feel like, especially at the beginning, you were getting a lot of like hippie type people in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, I was always looking for health hacks to like, I don't know. I feel like I've always tried to prioritize health because you only have one body. And if you have a migraine or you're sick, you can't focus on your family. You can't focus on your finances. You can't focus spiritually. So like prioritizing that is super important. So
yeah. Well, and like we always talk, like something that we always talk to people about is that like you put so much money into your car, right? Mm-hmm. Like to make sure that your car is running smoothly, like we put so much into it. And then like if you were to take that same amount of money that you probably spend on your cars and the maintenance on your cars, and like you put it into your body, your body would run
way better,
right? And it really is like, I think we kind of forget about like our well-being in our body until it's too late sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Until it's like we're in a spot where it's like, oh crap, like now how do I fix this?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where,
and it just comes out of nowhere usually.
Yeah.
Because the thing that like saunas and cold plunges have blown up. Like you've seen it on social media, like cold plunging. Everybody's doing a cold plunge every day on Instagram.
Oh, for sure.
And I was part of that for sure. But the two things that really sold me on the saunas and the cold plunge was like basically sitting in the cold water between 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 minute is like crazy benefits. Brown fat levels go up. It's like taking a free antidepressant and free Adderall pretty much, but without the consequences, right? It's like natural hit. And then the thing that really sold me about the saunas, and you know way more about this than me, obviously, but if you sit in a sauna that's over 170 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes, 4 to 7 times a week, your chance of all cause of death go down by 40%, stroke, heart attack, heart disease go down by like 60%. Crazy science.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
On the benefits.
Like the science from the sauna perspective is already pretty deep, because sauna has been practiced for like forever,
especially in
a lot of cultures. Like in Finland and in Russia and Turkey, like they all have their versions of that, and so it's been pretty well studied. And all of the items that you talked about, and they're starting to like find that there's even some links to Alzheimer's and of course really good benefits for your heart. So it's interesting where that sauna's coming from. And the cold plunge, I think within the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot more peer-reviewed research specifically to cold plunging and to contrast therapy as a whole. It's still pretty new. And that's also something that we want people to know about plunge, is like there are a lot of these benefits, but what we want people to kind of experience is just come in and do it once for yourself and see how you feel. Right? And like if you feel better than when you came in, that's like the whole goal. Right. And then, as you start doing it, you can start to learn about all these benefits and, what it's doing for you in all those other ways.
Totally. And I remember, another thing, like sauna is like one sauna use, like 20-minute sauna session, your depression levels go down for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy, all the benefits. And I remember hearing all that at Tony, and I had ice bath a little bit in high school playing football. I'd never really saunaed before, maybe with the friends a few times, you know, or like in a steam room.
Oh, I was the same way. Yeah.
But I hadn't really ever taken it seriously, and it was never in the forefront of my mind for like a health hack, you know? And I remember getting back from there, and I'm like, well, I need to go freaking sauna and go sit in the river. And it was in the middle of December. It'd be like 14 degrees. I go sit in the river for 2 minutes, and I'm like, that was the worst thing
it really
ever.
Is though.
It's so hard, especially when you're first like getting into it.
Yeah,
like
doing the river for your first sit in the winter.
It doesn't get colder when it's snowing.
Than that. Like I tell people all the time, they're like, what's the coldest you've ever sat? And I'm like, well, go sit in the river in the middle of the winter. Like
I actually sat in Provo River today with my friend for 2 minutes, and it's so cold because the water is moving.
Yeah.
You know, where if you sit in a cold tub, like it's cold, but if you sit still, like it's not too bad, but the water in the river is just flowing.
Your skin has this natural barrier that if you sit still, it kind of insulates itself a little bit.
Interesting.
But if that heat or if the water's rushing, it is continually removing that thermal barrier. It's kind of like a wind chill.
Yeah.
Makes the water feel a lot colder than it actually is.
If you guys haven't done a cold plunge or a sauna, like go book on Plunge, like plunj.co, right? And go freaking see how you feel.
Yeah, or just shoot me a message. Just go sit in the river.
Yeah, let's go.
I still go sit in the river quite often, just because it's a different experience and it's fun.
Yeah.
And if you're unsure about going to a public bathhouse, go sit in the cold water by yourself and then come and see us.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I've been in the river in the winter and at night, and like there's been people like at 9 o'clock at night who see me in the river and they're like, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, this is purposeful. This is for my health. This isn't like, don't worry. Like we're good."
That's hilarious. I remember walking out of the river one time and it was like snowing, and like people were looking at me like I was the craziest person ever. And I was by myself that time, and I'm like, "What's up?"
I'm like, "Hey, it's okay."
Yeah. No, for sure. And I noticed the first time when I sauna, like it was tough. Like sitting in a sauna for 20 minutes.
Especially a hot sauna.
Especially, at the Plunge, like it gets up to like 200 degrees.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's like uncomfortable. Like by minute 12, you're ready to get out, and you just gotta keep pushing. But I've noticed huge health benefits on doing both of those.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. It's
funny too, because like, it's a communal space.
Yeah.
And so you're in there with people that you probably don't know, you know? And you'd think that would be kind of a detractor, but when you do something with other people that's hard and that challenges you, you have this like, even if you don't talk to them, like you're somehow connected with them.
It's like a little bond somehow.
Like you're forming these little bonds. Even if you don't talk to them that time, you might see them down the road and you're like, "Hey, like
I remember you."
Yeah, we sat in that sauna for a long time together and we're sweating. And it's interesting because a lot of like friendships and like relationships have been formed in the sauna, and that's, traditionally in sauna culture, that's where a lot of people will do business, and that's where a lot of people will meet their friends. Just
instead of the golf course, they're in the sauna together.
Yeah, it's a very unifying experience.
Yeah.
And there's some quote, I think it's like some Finnish proverb where they say like, you're never more equal than when you're in the sauna, right?
Interesting.
Because especially in Finland, everybody doesn't have any clothes on, so you're very equal. But it's interesting.
That's crazy. And it's fun because like before, when I wanted to like network or whatever, I'd take him to lunch, or like golf was the other option, or Top Golf. But like having Plunge was fun because you could just say, "Hey, like let's go sauna and see how you do in the cold water."
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun experience to bring people. So, so now fast forward to you guys are 4 years in business almost. No, 3.
Yeah.
3 years. And you guys have like 12 locations pending to be opened total, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, I took on a partner back in 2020 2022, like the spring of 2022. And he had a lot of experience in franchising and had run a lot of franchises. And that was kind of where we wanted to take it. And
was that always a plan to franchise?
It was always in the back of my mind.
Okay.
Right. Like that's
quick, scalable way to
grow.
Like
we really wanted to make this, like our version of this, very scalable so that we could, so like you'd see one in a lot of communities. Right. And so that's, that was kind of the whole idea. We had no idea when and if it would ever happen. Right. And so when we took on that partner, we were able to kind of start the ball rolling on that. And now, we've got 12 locations that we're looking to get up and running. Those are like sold territories, and a lot of them have been announced on our Instagram page. And
cool. Some
of them are in the States, some of them are out of state. We have a few in Idaho, some in Arizona, one down in Miami, Florida, and there's a few other states that we're looking to get into as well. And we're always looking for more. Our goal is that by the end of this year of 2024, we'll have like 10 operational or under construction. That's our goal.
Yeah.
And we want to sell a handful more than that as well. So
wow, really cool. How did that first year in business go? Was it everything you hoped and dreamed?
Well, it was more because it was funny. Like we were talking about all the uncertainty right at the beginning. Yeah. Right. And
that was the toughest part of the business.
For sure. And month 3, we were actually able to pull, I think we pulled we were cash flow positive and pulled like a net profit of like $7.
Wow.
Right?
$7. Let's go.
And we're
That's awesome.
And we're like, and literally that day I was like, this weight had been lifted. I'm like, okay.
That was like the best $7 you ever made.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think I have that so P&L awesome. Like framed somewhere. Right. Like,
that's so cool.
Like that day. And it was at month 3, we felt really proud.
That's awesome.
That we were able to do that at month 3. And
impressive.
Then it was just a few months after that when, the snowball started to kind of grow, and we realized that 3 months after that, we were operating at a level where I'm like, oh, like I could, like, this could be my career, and then a little bit after that is, probably 3 months after that is when we started to operate at like pretty much full capacity. And we never thought that we would be operating at like 90 to 100% capacity some weeks. Really consistently. And that's, we're still, operating at that down there in Provo, even though we've opened up more sessions and tried to get more availability. And so from that standpoint, it's gone really well.
So within the first year, you guys were cranking pretty much. By the end of that year, you were full capacity consistently pretty much.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because there were, as good as that sounds, there were so many operational inefficiencies that we had to fix. There were so many things that we had to do better. Broke. Yeah, the sauna would break, or like our cold plunge pools were not the ones that we needed to use moving forward.
Right, because you had to keep refilling them because the filter wasn't
good. Yeah, we had to, no matter what we would do, we would have to like refill them once, if not twice a day.
Yeah, it's annoying.
And there was just a lot of things like that. And not to mention, when we first opened, we, kind of chatted with the health department about what we wanted to do, but they didn't know how to classify us. And so we opened, and then 18 months down the road, they came to us telling us that we needed to close and reopen. So we closed down, and
I bet that was a pain in the butt.
It was a huge pain in the butt, but it's funny because I think this is kind of the way a lot of things go in business. Like it was a huge pain in the butt. Yeah. But the way that we're operating now versus the way we were operating with those old cold plunges, like it was a huge blessing in disguise, because these pools that we've designed are so much more efficient. They're so much cleaner. It's such a better experience for the end user. And I think, moving forward, it's like we don't anticipate changing the way that we operate in one bit, even with, the added pain of working with the health department. And so, trust me, there was a lot of probably, not nice things said about the health department during that time frame when Saratoga was getting ready to open up, and like we were trying to do our remodel. It was a pain in the butt, but we've figured that out here in the state of Utah, and we feel like we have a really good template moving forward for other states. And we understand code, and we understand we really understand how our pools work and operate in water chemistry. And so I feel like that for us to be able to become experts in that area is only going to make it better for the end user and a lot safer for the end user.
Right.
So, you know, it sucked, but we're glad that we had
Blessing
to do
in
it.
disguise. Yeah. Tony always says like, life happens for me, not to me. And like, and in that case, I'm sure in the moment you're like, this is the worst thing that could happen. Like they're trying to shut down our location.
Oh yeah.
Like you guys already told us that we have a green light when we talked to you the first time, and now you're trying to shut us down. It was
a whole roller coaster of emotions. And like the hard thing is like I could always understand where they're coming from, right? Like it wasn't like I knew there was no malice in it, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, like this is our business. You want me to shut down for 6 months while I do this? And, and you know, that's what ended up happening. But you know, we did it. And now on the other side, especially from me, like trying to open up other locations and, you know, trying to be an expert for other people to open it up in the way that we want it opened up. Like that was huge, almost necessary, right? Like there's no way that we could do what we're doing if we hadn't have, you know, gone through it like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and it's cool. 'Cause I remember getting in at a really early time when Plunge had just started opening up, and it was cool to watch like you guys grow, because at the beginning it was available anytime. Like I could choose a time that worked for me, but then pretty soon it was getting booked out where I'm like, frick, I gotta schedule all of my plunges like in advance so they don't get booked. And people were bringing their friends all the time, and like word of mouth just kind of blew you guys up. Yeah. Honestly, people ask us like what our marketing budget was. And like, I had, you know, planned out a really intense marketing plan that had like phases and, you know, like over the space of a whole year. And really like from early on, we noticed that the referrals were what kept bringing people in. And so we leaned into that really heavily. I tried to help with that.
Oh, for sure. Well, I remember we used to do this thing where if you brought somebody that signed up for their own membership, then you would get like a few free months of your membership. And I think I'm sure I got some of that. I think you got some of that. But that's like we leaned into a lot of those tactics really early on. And people ask us now, like, what have you spent on marketing? And it's like nothing. Maybe $500. Wow. And like Instagram ads, you know? Wow. And I mean, that's like cash, right? Because we've spent more in like creating coupon codes, right. You know, sunk costs that way.
That's still really cool though.
But yeah, like it's kind of interesting that if you can find, you know, a way to lean into it like that, and you know, is kind of cool to see that, you know, people were sharing it that way, which we feel really lucky.
Well, and I think you guys have done a really good job, because Tony Robbins says, I keep quoting Tony.
Oh hey, no, it's good.
But Tony says like the secret in business is like over deliver. And like, because if you over deliver, if you give your customers such a good experience, then they'll want to come back and bring their friends and share it with their network. And I think like Plunge was such a unique like experience that a lot of people just went in and didn't know what to expect. They liked it. They liked how they felt, the benefits, and then they just bring other people to come try it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that like, you know, we were talking about the simplicity of the business, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things that we kept driving on is like, let's just try and do this really well. Yeah. And I know we wanted to do yoga, but this allows us to go into those yoga studios and say, hey, like we're a business partner with you. Let's collaborate and let's like bring your yoga studio clients into our space, and we'll bring our people into your space. And so it allowed us like a lot more flexibility working with people. Yeah. And then not only that, but I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Power of Habit.
Yeah. Great book.
Yeah. Like it talks about the habit cycle and how habits are formed. Mm-hmm. And there's a part in there where it talks about like toothpaste, for example, like the mint in toothpaste actually doesn't do anything. It's just because when you get done, you want that feeling of
it's like a reward.
Yeah, having that reward that you get from feeling like you have a clean mouth. And I feel like unintentionally, like sauna and cold plunge leaves you with that like minty fresh feeling as you're leaving. You know, there's a definite reward to just going through the suck. Yeah, exactly. So I think that helps too, is that people are like, whoa, like I've never like really felt like this before. And you know, we are kind of flooding their systems with some dopamine and stuff. So it's kind of an unfair,
like you're actually changing their brain chemistry when they come in. That's really cool. And yeah, I'm addicted to it. Like still, like I have a cold plunge and I go all the time, and I want to get a sauna in my backyard so I don't even have to commute at all. And just,
hey, let's chat. I can lead you through some of the things I've learned about building the sauna.
Yeah, I bet
we can build you a really good sauna.
Heck yeah. So let me ask you this. So kind of reflecting on your journey and stuff, I'm sure, doing marketing and advertising in college has helped you. Yeah. Would you agree? Like, are you glad that you went to school looking back, or do you think that was something you didn't need?
It's interesting. Like, I don't think, like, so I always tell people that the only classes that I always draw back on from school, there's like 3 classes. Yeah. There's a public speaking class. Okay. Communication. There was an MCOM 320 class, which was all about business writing. Okay. And then I also had it was a marketing and analytics class where they like did a lot into like stats and, like Excel documents and being able to pull meaning from data. So those are the 3 that like I still utilize on all the time. But I think what school probably taught me more than anything was how to dedicate and like get through the stuff that sucks, even though you don't really understand like what's happening with it. I don't think that school is the right answer for everybody, right? Like I do think that people are able to build careers and do things without school that, that isn't necessarily needed, right? Like if you've got the personality and the drive and the desire to be a salesman, like you can make way more than most people will ever make coming out of school, and you will not have the debt to show for it, right? And same with a lot of those types of careers, like, software programmers, they can go to like Dev Mountain or some of those, accelerated programs and churn through what they need to know. And as long as they can build up a portfolio, they don't need a 4-year degree. You know what I mean? Wow. So that's kind of my feeling on it is if you know what you want to do and you have a better path through it, there are so many ways nowadays to find your path rather than having to pay for a 4-year degree. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you pay with your money, but also 4 years. Exactly. 4 years of your life. 4 years of your life gone. Yeah. 100%. No. And I agree 100%. I think everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own, hand that they're dealt growing up. And you just kind of got to figure out what you like, what you don't like, your strengths, your weaknesses, and kind of see what your intuition tells you. Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest part of that is whether you go to school or you're doing something else, a lot of it has to do with the dedication and the persistence of doing with what you're following. Because even if you're not in school, it might take you 4 years to break into whatever you're doing. Yeah. And you have to be consistent about wanting to do that, right? Because it might take you longer than that. 1,000%. And you have to be persistent. You have to work hard. And, school is just one way to demonstrate that you were persistent and worked hard in a specific set, and they give you a piece of paper telling you that you did that. Yeah. So you can go show other people, but that's it, really. Totally. But if you committed 4 years to just about anything, you can make it happen. For sure. 100%. But so many people go start, sales or something else or their business. And then, first month, only one customer's coming in the door and you're let's hang it up. Let's go. Well, this better than probably anybody is that like, you anybody that's entering into the summer sales arena, they're like, oh, like this is going to be awesome. This is going to be easy. And then all of a sudden they get out there and start knocking. They're like, whoa. Like this is not fun. This is not what I signed up for. Yeah. But it's the people who can like see through that and keep working and do it for a year or two. Then they're starting to be the ones that reap the benefit. Right. It's yeah. Anyways. Yeah. And you only get better and your commission only gets higher and it just gets easier. Like my hardest summer was my first summer. And like, just like your hardest year in business was the first year. And it's like the Mike Tyson quote, like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Like 100%. Business life punches you in the mouth many times. And it's like, how do you deal with the punches? And like, what do you do going forward differently? Oh yeah. I mean, there's still things, I think we'd probably need another hour to dive down some of this, but like, there's still things that, where we feel Plunge is in a good spot,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, we're still getting punched in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
There's still things that are cropping up that are like, oh, like didn't think about that. And now that's like, how do we get through it? And like, like we were saying, right before we started this, I feel like that no matter where you're at in your progression of your career or whatever you're doing, I feel like there's always like this other thing that's just right out of reach that you can't quite get to.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that will ever, if you're ever going to really reach it. I think that's where you got to find joy and just trying to get there. You know what I mean? And even though it keeps jumping,
Yeah. And I feel like one of my like favorite definitions of happiness is growth. Like growth equals happiness to me. And like when I look back at like when I've been the happiest in life, it's when I've been growing the most. And I think that's why it's always like, 10 locations, 20, 30, like you're always pushing that needle, and it's good and it's healthy because you're growing, your business is growing, and you feel that progress,
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's no joy without understanding that there's going to be a lot of suck that goes with it. Like you don't know what it is to feel good and what it is to feel happy if you haven't felt crappy. You know what I mean? So it really is this whole cycle of understanding that. So
yeah, and I feel like a lot of people get lost in that, where they're like, I'll be happy when I have 15 locations. I'll be happy when my business does 10 million revenue. I'll be happy when this, when that. And one of my favorite books ever is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker.
Ooh, I need to read that. I don't know.
It's good. He like studied happiness at Harvard and like teaches businesses and CEOs all around the world about happiness. And basically some of the stuff he found is like, successful people aren't happy because they're successful. They were happy and that made them successful.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. So yeah, it's a good book. I'd recommend it. But
yeah, I'll have to check that out. I love this. It's interesting. Like quickly going back to that, really hard space of time when I started Plunge.
Yeah.
One of the things that like I kind of had an aha moment, in some of the talk therapy I was doing was that one of the ladies, she's like, what do you value? Right. And I was kind of telling her my stresses about, the finances and about what it means for the future of my family. And she's like, well, what do you value? And I was like, well, I value money. She's like, no, you don't. You don't value money. She's like, money's not something that you value, something that you want, but like, what do you value? And I was like, well, I value, like relationships and like time with my family. And she's like, well, then start trying to like build your business and do things on a daily basis that are catering to your values, not to your worries. Right.
Yeah.
Because when you start like catering to the things that you're worried about, it creates anxiety and it creates stress. But if you cater to things that are your values that you want to build, like you start seeing value in that a lot more tangibly than you do from just like money coming into your bank account, which is interesting.
That's really cool. That's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I feel like I've heard this before where it's like, you don't want a Ferrari. You don't want a bigger house. You don't want $1 million a year in income. You want what you think those things will make you feel.
Oh, that's so true. 100%.
And it's like, really? And you think about it, it's like true 99% of the time. Like you really do. And you could feel like you just got a Ferrari every day if you really thought about it and really like focused on it,
for sure.
And it's like why delay that happiness when you could feel it on a daily basis, just focusing on like the good things in life, like the relationships you have, things you're grateful for already, good things that have happened, people really. Yep.
And I feel like entrepreneurship and trying to do things solo is that it forces you to have to like try and make some of those like realizations, like because there's nothing really to fall back on in some of those instances. So anyways, kind of tying it back to entrepreneurship, I feel like, a lot of those things you're talking about, they kind of force you to do that when you're trying to be an entrepreneur.
Totally. And just wrapping things up a little bit, but I remember listening to podcasts back when I was like younger. I'm still young, I feel like, but
you're still way young.
Back in the day before I ever started a business or invested or any of that. And I just remember thinking and listening to these podcasts where I'm like, wow, this guy, like, he's done this, this, and this. It's so cool. Like, I could never do that. Like, what advice would you give somebody that has a business idea that wants to go start a business, like what advice would you give them?
I think the first thing is just like, go and do it.
Yeah.
Right. Find the smallest way to get out there and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And just try and do it. Right. Cause I can't remember, who said it, but it's like 99% of businesses fail because they never get out of the ideation stage. Right. Like if you actually kind of bring it to fruition and you try, even if it fails, you're going to learn something. Right. And I think that's like the biggest thing is just try and act on it. Right. Just put something into action and go do it. If you're like, man, I've always wanted to try, freelance editing or whatever, right? Like just go put something up on Fiverr and start trying to get 1 or 2 gigs and see if it's something that you want to do. And
right.
I feel like from there, it's going to give you a basis to like figure out, oh, like I actually don't want to do this, but I really liked doing this. And it kind of helps build on itself in different ways.
Great advice. Cause like I heard Corbin Church talk at BYU and he's like, the best way to learn about business is to be in business and like go try it, go do it. And so many people get so scared of like, oh, what will this person think of me? Like you had some of that even at the beginning phases.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm sure they're not laughing at you anymore.
Well, maybe some of them probably are still. Yeah. And the other interesting part about that is that you I just completely lost my train of thought.
I was talking about like people laughing at you, but yeah, pretty much like, just
we both lost our train of thought.
We both did. Here, we'll skip down to this question real quick. But, what's something that you've done that everyone should go do?
Oh man, what's something I've done that everybody should go do?
Cold plunge.
Heck yeah. Go jump in the river.
Go jump in the Provo River.
Go jump in the river. I would probably say, and this isn't like unique to me, right? And this has to do with cold water. And it's like completely contrary to everything that I, thought about growing up, but like put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right?
Beautiful.
Right. Whether that's like, another small, like growing up, I did track, but I would only sprint. Like I'd never run over a mile. Like that was just dumb.
Yeah. Cross country.
Right?
Always.
But then like the more that I got to know myself, I'm like, no, I am capable of more. Right. And that's when I got into like ultra running and like proving that to yourself gives you perspective on like, hey, like I'm actually stronger than I thought in this area. Right. And doing that, whether it's with school, whether it's with a business, whether it's with like, trying to eat healthier, right? Like pushing yourself to do those things that are uncomfortable, it gives you that perspective to look back on and be like, oh, like I actually was stronger than I gave myself credit for, even though even at the time or even now, like I don't feel it. It gives you that perspective to look back on and be like, okay, I can do it. And the cold water is just a small sliver of something like that, right?
Yeah, totally. I agree 100%. Like stay uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I heard a quote like, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there.
Yeah.
Like you have to, like in order to grow in any area of your life, like you have to put yourself through pain and suffering to like get the reward. And it's cool. That's great advice.
Yeah. Well, like nature teaches that with like, the strongest plants have to fight for their sunlight and their water and, like just everything in general. And I feel like it's kind of, ubiquitous across the line.
Just a law. Yeah. Well, sweet, Sean. Any last Sean tips before we wrap up? This has been awesome.
No, I just, thanks for having me in, man. I appreciate it. This is fun. This is my favorite part about Plunge, in all honesty, is getting to like meet people and getting to talk to people and
tell your story.
Yeah, it's my favorite part. I'm on phone calls, a few times a week with people who are interested in Plunge, and most of the time I schedule those calls not because I think they're going to be franchisees or something like that. It's fun to meet people. Like I've met so many more people in the last, 3 years than I had ever met, in like my entire life.
Wow.
And it's been so much fun for that. So this is just like one of those like small little ways that you know, I get to meet somebody. Well, I've met you before, but hopefully I'll get to meet people that see this.
Yeah.
It's fun. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. This has been awesome. And thanks for coming on. I know everybody watching or listening, like, got huge gold nuggets today from hearing your story and the lessons. And yeah, if you did get value, like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and go follow Plunge, their journey. Go follow Sean. We'll put his Instagram in the description. But yeah, like, I'm excited to see Plunge grow, see you grow as an entrepreneur, and see this thing take off even more than it already has.
Thanks.
It's a phenomenon here in Utah. Like, people rave about it. So yeah, it's kind of cool to see the cult-like following that you guys have kind of created. So.
It's kind of cool how in Utah we have this knack for, like, creating these little weird businesses that like kind of spread, and I'm hoping that Plunge will be one of those. Who knows if it will be.
Watch Shark Tank 2027.
So yeah, exactly.
He'll be on there.
Yeah. Oh man.
But awesome. Thanks again, man. And until next time, you guys.
Okay.
Peace.